Will to Power Part 2. Getting back to Nietzsche, his idea of the will to power involves recognizing this desire to control that is in all of us. Recognizing and controlling all of the games that we play so that we can rationally and skillfully guarantee personal growth, self-domination, self-preservation, and upward mobility. In the final section, in the Will to Power, Nietzsche sums up his philosophy in this way, and I'm going to read the entire section to you. It's section 1067, so you get the full impact, if you will, of Nietzsche's passion about the will to power. In fact, his will to power in action. Section 1067, at the end of the Will to Power. And do you know what the world is to me? Shall I show it to you in my mirror? This world, a monster of energy without beginning, without end, a firm, iron magnitude of force that does not grow bigger or smaller, that does not expend itself, but only transforms itself as a whole of unalterable size, a household without income, a household without losses, but likewise without increase. Enclosed by nothingness as by a boundary, not something blurry or wasted, not something endlessly extended, not something but set in a definite space as a definite force, and not a space that might be empty here or there, but rather as force throughout, as a play of forces and waves of forces, at the same time one in many, increasing here and at the same time decreasing there, a sea of forces flowing and rushing together, eternally changing, eternally flooding back, with tremendous years of recurrence, with an ebb and a flood of its forms. Out of the simplest forms striving toward the most complex. Out of the stillest, most rigid, coldest forms toward the hottest, most turbulent, most self-contradictory. And then again returning home to the simple out of this abundance. Out of the play of contradictions, back to the joy of concord. Still affirming itself in this uniformity of its courses and its years, blessing itself as that which must return eternally, as a becoming that knows no satiety, no disgust, no weariness. This is my Dionysian world of the eternally self-creating, the eternally self-destroying, this mystery world of the twofold voluptuous light, my beyond good and evil, without goal, unless the goal of the circle is itself a goal, without will, unless a ring feels goodwill toward itself. Do you want a name for this world? A solution for all of its riddles? A light for you too, you best concealed, strongest, most intrepid, most midnightly men and women. This world is the will to power, and nothing besides. And you yourselves are also this will to power, and nothing besides. And now let's look at how this notion of the will to power was fashioned. The most redeeming quality of being human, according to Nietzsche, is this instinctive will to power. In section 767 of the Will to Power, Nietzsche says this: the human being, the individual, is something quite new which creates new things, something absolute. All his acts are entirely his own. You are entirely responsible. Ultimately, the individual derives the values of his acts from himself, because he has to interpret in a quite individual way even the words he has inherited from others. His interpretation of a formula, at least, is personal, even if he does not create a formula. As an interpreter, he is still creative. In section 768, Nietzsche writes about this nature of humans in the form of ego. The ego subdues and kills. It operates like an organic cell. It is robber and violent. It wants to regenerate itself, pregnancy. It wants to give birth to its God and see all mankind at its feet. And he says in section 769, every living thing reaches out as far from itself with its force as it can, and overwhelms what is weaker, Thus it takes pleasure in itself. The increasing humanizing of this tendency consists in this, that there is an ever subtler sense of how hard it is really to incorporate another. While a crude injury done him certainly demonstrates power over him, it at the same time estranges his will from us even more, and thus makes him less easy to subjugate. The individual has a subtle sense, Nietzsche is saying, that physical violence alone will most likely make other persons resentful and indignant, and will drive them away from us, from our powerful influence as leaders. The ego finds other ways to exert its powerful influence than through stupidly violent ways. So that regardless of what types of situation in which individuals find themselves, their will to power will exert its influence in some way or another. Nietzsche identifies these ways as what he calls disguised forms of the will to power, which means the will appears to come from something other than itself, such as sympathy, compassion, pity, reciprocal altruism, and love. The first of these disguised forms of the will to power is the desire for freedom, for independence, and for peace. What subserves these desires is the will toward self-preservation and the will toward existence in general. We want peace, we want independence, we want freedom, so that we're not at risk from the violent behaviors of others, from others who want to take these things from us. We crave autonomy naturally because we do not desire enslavement or subjugation by others, whether by persons or by ideologies. The second type of disguised individual will to power is what Nietzsche calls enrollment, meaning submission to those in power or authority in order to acquire a certain aspect of control over them. To realize this control, you make yourself important, indeed indispensable, to superiors, to those in authority, in order to exact gratitude from them. We need our superiors to see us as vital and indispensable, to become so skillful and experienced at what we do that very few other persons are capable or willing to expend the same thing, let alone do it so proficiently. Another type of enrollment is love, a way in which one gains control over others.